There are evenings when a small unanswered message seems to occupy more space in the mind than it should. The room may be quiet. Nothing may be happening. The phone lies still on a table, its screen dark, and yet part of your attention remains turned toward it, listening for a sound that has not come. A result may be due tomorrow. A journey may still have another hour to go. A page may be taking a little too long to load. Sleep itself may feel as though it is somewhere nearby, but not yet willing to arrive. In moments like these, waiting can feel strangely active. The body is still, but the mind keeps leaning forward. This discomfort is not a sign of weakness, and it does not mean that a person lacks discipline. Waiting places the brain in an unfinished situation. Something has been expected, but the expected event has not yet occurred. The mind has made a prediction, and reality has not confirmed it. Researchers often describe the brain as a system that continually anticipates what may happen next. It uses past experience and present clues to prepare the body for likely outcomes. When an outcome remains unresolved, the prediction cannot be fully updated. Attention may return to it again and again, checking whether the missing piece has appeared. This is one reason an unanswered message can remain mentally present while you are doing something else. The conversation has not clearly ended. There is no new information to close it, continue it, or explain the silence. The uncertainty leaves a small open loop. The mind may revisit possible explanations because uncertain situations are difficult to ignore. One possible explanation is that they may still require action. If the outcome is unknown, the brain cannot be entirely sure whether it is safe to turn away. Known waiting often feels different. When a train is expected in 10 minutes, or bread must remain in the oven for a set time, the delay has a shape. The mind can place it inside a simple prediction. But when the timing is unknown, the experience becomes less stable. A reply might come in 1 minute or tomorrow. A decision might arrive this week or next month. Without a clear boundary, attention may keep returning to the possibility that the outcome is about to happen. Each return refreshes the waiting. Anticipation can also change the texture of time. This does not make patience the same as time perception, but the two can touch. When attention is repeatedly directed toward the arrival of something, the delay becomes more noticeable. Watching a clock gives the mind frequent evidence that the expected moment is still not here. Each glance divides the weight into smaller pieces and makes those pieces easier to count. By contrast, when attention settles into another gentle activity, the same minutes may pass with less friction. The duration has not changed, but the nervous system is no longer measuring every moment against what is missing. The brain is naturally sensitive to rewards, especially those that are immediate and predictable. A notification sound, a new message, a quickly loading image, or a small piece of information can provide a brief sense of completion. Studies of reward processing suggest that anticipation is influenced not only by the reward itself, but also by its timing and uncertainty. An immediate reward allows prediction and outcome to meet quickly. A delayed reward leaves more space between wanting and receiving, and that space must be regulated. Patience appears to involve several interacting abilities rather than one single trait. Attention must remain flexible enough to move away from the unresolved outcome. An urge to check, interrupt, rush, or abandon the process may need to be noticed and allowed to soften. The prefrontal cortex, involved in planning, inhibition, and behavioral regulation, often helps people consider longer-term goals rather than responding only to the strongest immediate impulse. But this regulation is not effortless, and it is not equally available in every condition. When a person is hungry, exhausted, stressed, or deprived of sleep, waiting may become much harder. The nervous system has fewer resources for holding competing possibilities in mind. Small delays can begin to feel like obstacles. A slow cue, a spinning symbol on a screen, or a person taking too long to answer may seem more irritating than it would on a rested day. This does not mean that patience has disappeared. It may simply mean that the brain is already carrying too much. Restlessness often grows louder when the body is asking for care. Patience, then, is not passive resignation. It is not the suppression of every uncomfortable feeling, and it is not the decision that nothing matters. It is the capacity to remain relatively steady while something important is still incomplete. Sometimes that steadiness includes action. A person may make a plan, ask for information, set a boundary, or decide how long they are willing to wait. Healthy patience does not require staying forever in confusion or harm. It allows uncertainty to exist without giving uncertainty complete control. For now, it may be enough to notice the simple shape of waiting. The mind leans toward an outcome. Attention returns to what has not happened. The body prepares for news that has not arrived. And beneath all of this, another possibility remains. Gently returning to the present moment, not once and for all, but many times. Outside, beneath dark soil, a seed may be resting without any visible sign of change. Moisture is entering its coat. Cells are beginning quiet work. Nothing above the ground announces what is happening below. The process has started, even though the result cannot yet be seen. Below the soil, the seed does not experience its own growth as a sudden event. There is no single dramatic instant when stillness becomes life. Water slowly softens the outer layer. Stored energy becomes available. Enzymes begin their careful work. A root tip presses into the surrounding earth, moving through spaces too small to notice from above. What appears to be inactivity may contain many coordinated changes, each one preparing the next. Human waiting often feels difficult because the mind sees only the quiet surface. It cannot easily detect the hidden processes that may already be unfolding. The brain prefers information that reduces uncertainty. A clear answer allows predictions to be revised and attention to move elsewhere. In the absence of an answer, the mind may continue generating possibilities. Perhaps the reply has been delayed. Perhaps the result has changed. Perhaps something needs to be done. This mental searching is understandable. In uncertain conditions, considering different outcomes can sometimes be useful. But when no new evidence is available, the same possibilities may circle without bringing the situation any closer to resolution. Researchers suggest that uncertainty can capture attention because it carries potential importance. A known negative outcome may be unpleasant, but at least it can be placed into a plan. An unknown outcome remains open. The nervous system may treat it as unfinished information that deserves continued monitoring. This is why a person may check an inbox even after deciding not to check it or listen for a sound that has not occurred. The checking offers a momentary sense of action. For a brief instant, it seems possible that uncertainty will end. When nothing new appears, however, the relief is short. The mind has received another small confirmation that the answer is still absent. The urge may return soon afterward. In this way, repeated checking can become part of the experience of impatience. It does not create the original uncertainty, but it may keep attention closely attached to it. Each check places the unresolved outcome back at the center of awareness. Modern digital environments make this pattern especially easy to repeat. Messages arrive quickly enough that even a modest delay can feel meaningful. Pages open in moments. Videos begin almost immediately. Search results appear before a thought has fully settled. Notifications divide the day into frequent small rewards, each one offering novelty, information, or social contact. Over time, the nervous system may become accustomed to very short intervals between desire and response. This does not mean that technology destroys patience, nor that every quick reward is harmful. Immediate communication can be useful, comforting, and efficient. The difficulty arises when rapid response becomes the expected rhythm for nearly everything. A delay of several seconds may then feel like a failure rather than an ordinary part of a process. Quiet moments can begin to seem empty because they do not provide the next signal quickly enough. Reward research suggests that the brain responds not only to receiving something pleasant, but also to cues that predict its arrival. A sound, an icon, or a movement on a screen may become associated with the possibility of a reward. The anticipation itself can pull attention forward. When the expected reward is delayed, the system remains prepared. The hand may reach toward the phone before a conscious decision has been made. The body has learned that checking often leads to something new. Delayed rewards require a different kind of regulation. The desired result must remain meaningful even while it is absent. The brain must tolerate the gap between choosing and receiving. This process appears to involve communication between systems related to reward, emotion, memory, and planning. The prefrontal cortex may help represent future consequences, maintain goals, and reduce the influence of an immediate urge. Yet patience is not simply a contest in which reason defeats desire. Regulation means allowing these signals to be present while choosing how much authority they should have. A person waiting for important news may feel tension in the chest, a slight tightening of the jaw, or a restless desire to move. These sensations can seem like instructions. Check again. Do something now. Make the uncertainty stop. But bodily urgency does not always mean that action is possible or necessary. Sometimes, it is simply the nervous system preparing for an outcome it cannot yet predict. Slow breathing may help because breathing is both automatic and partly voluntary. A gentle lengthening of the exhalation can provide the body with a steady rhythm that does not depend on the awaited result. Studies have found that slower breathing may be associated with shifts in autonomic activity and reduced physiological arousal. It does not solve uncertainty, but it may make the body less likely to interpret every moment of delay as an emergency. Other quiet rhythms can have a similar effect. Walking at an unhurried pace, washing dishes, folding fabric, watering plants, or listening to rain may give attention a simple pattern to follow. These activities do not demand constant decision-making. They offer mild sensory change without rapid interruption. The mind can remain aware of the unresolved situation while no longer holding it in the foreground every second. Patience often begins in this modest way, not by eliminating the desire for an answer, but by loosening attention from it for a little while. The unanswered message still exists. The result is still pending. The future is still unknown, yet the present moment contains other information. The weight of the body against the chair. The quiet movement of air. The faint sound of water somewhere nearby. A river does not pause when it reaches a stone. It divides around the obstruction, narrows, deepens, and joins itself again beyond it. The stone remains, and the water does not pretend otherwise. It simply continues using the space that is available. Human patience may sometimes resemble this gentle flexibility. The desired path is delayed, but attention can still move. The mind can flow around what has not yet changed, carrying the unfinished question without allowing it to block the whole landscape. That ability to keep moving while an outcome remains unresolved is closely related to attention. Attention is often described as though it were a spotlight that can simply be pointed wherever we choose. But in practice, it is more easily pulled than that. Important, novel, emotional, or uncertain information tends to compete for priority. A pending result can become one of those competitors. Even when a person is reading, cooking, or trying to fall asleep, part of the mind may continue monitoring the background for signs that something has changed. This monitoring can be subtle. A phone may not be in the hand, yet the possibility of a notification remains mentally available. A person may be watching a film while also wondering whether an email has arrived. The task in front of them receives attention, but not all of it. Researchers sometimes describe this kind of divided mental state in terms of attentional capture and task switching. Even brief shifts of attention can carry a small cost. The mind must leave one set of information, orient toward another, and then reconstruct what it was doing before. When this happens repeatedly, waiting can become more tiring than it first appears. The delay itself may be passive, but the brain is not. It is checking, predicting, comparing, and preparing. If the expected event matters emotionally, the repeated shifts may become even more frequent. This is one reason uncertainty can feel mentally crowded. Nothing visible may be happening, but many possible outcomes are being held nearby. Boredom can intensify this effect. When the environment offers very little that is engaging, attention has fewer places to settle. Small delays then become more prominent. A line at a shop may feel longer when there is nothing to notice except the line. A slow download may feel more irritating when a person is staring directly at its progress. The mind becomes highly sensitive to the fact that the desired event has not yet occurred. Boredom is not simply emptiness. Some researchers suggest that it may signal a mismatch between the attention available and the activity at hand. The mind wants something meaningful enough to engage with, yet the current situation does not provide it. During a wait, that mismatch can be uncomfortable. The brain begins searching for stimulation. This is where scrolling, refreshing, checking, and switching can become especially attractive. They provide immediate novelty and temporarily reduce the feeling of being stuck. But frequent novelty can also change expectations. If every quiet interval is filled within seconds, the nervous system gets less practice staying with low stimulation states. The next pause may feel even more unusual. Patience is not lost in a permanent sense, but tolerance for delay can become less familiar. Repeated exposure to manageable waiting may work in the opposite direction. A short pause before opening a message, a few minutes spent standing without reaching for a screen, or a slow activity that cannot be rushed, may gradually become less uncomfortable. The brain learns through experience that waiting does not always require immediate correction. The feeling of urgency can rise and then fall on its own. This does not mean forcing oneself into frustration for the sake of discipline. Patience is more likely to grow when the delay is tolerable rather than overwhelming. A manageable pause gives the nervous system a chance to experience restlessness without being consumed by it. Over time, that experience may become more familiar. The person still notices the urge to act, but the urge no longer feels identical to a command. The distinction matters because suppression is different from regulation. Suppression tries to push the feeling away, to behave as though impatience does not exist. Regulation allows the feeling to be noticed while changing the response to it. A person may think, "I want this answer now," and still decide not to check again for a while. The desire remains true. The behavior becomes more flexible. That flexibility is one of the quiet strengths of patience. It gives the mind room to choose among several possible responses instead of following the first one automatically. The pause may be brief, but it can create space for better decisions. An irritated reply can remain unsent. A rushed purchase can be reconsidered. A problem can be allowed to develop enough information before a conclusion is reached. Studies of delayed gratification have often explored situations in which people choose between a smaller reward now and a larger reward later. These experiments are sometimes simplified into stories about willpower, but the real picture is more complicated. Choices about delay can be shaped by trust in the environment, previous experience, stress, available resources, and how certain the future reward seems. Waiting makes more sense when a person has reason to believe that the later outcome will actually arrive. This is another reason patience should not be treated as a moral ranking. Someone under financial strain, physical exhaustion, or emotional stress may value immediacy because the present need is genuinely stronger. Patience depends partly on context. Even so, when conditions are safe enough, the ability to tolerate a gap between wanting and receiving can become useful. It allows goals that unfold slowly to remain possible. Learning a skill, repairing a relationship, growing a garden, or completing careful research all involve periods when effort has been invested, but the result is not yet visible. In a garden, roots expand before flowers appear. The most important early growth may remain underground. Fine root hairs reach into the soil, drawing in water and minerals while the stem above changes only slightly. Day after day, the plant is doing work that cannot be hurried into visibility. Human attention often wants the flower before the roots have finished growing. It prefers evidence, confirmation, and visible progress. Patience offers another way of relating to that unseen interval. It does not require certainty that everything will succeed. It simply allows the process to continue long enough for more information to emerge. Above the soil, a closed bud may remain nearly unchanged through the evening. Then, over many quiet hours, its outer petals loosen by fractions too small to watch in real time. By morning, the shape is different. No single moment carried the whole transformation. The change was distributed across the night, and perhaps many forms of waiting are like that. The mind looks for the instant when something finally happens, while much of life unfolds in increments that are too small to announce themselves. Patience is partly the willingness to live inside those increments. Living inside those small increments requires the brain to do something that is easy to overlook. It must hold a future possibility in mind without treating the present moment as a mistake. This is especially important when a reward, answer, or change is expected but delayed. The nervous system has to balance two different kinds of information. One part of experience says that something matters and should be pursued. Another says that nothing useful can be done right now. Patience appears in the space between those signals. The prefrontal cortex is often involved in creating that space. This region of the brain helps with planning, comparing options, inhibiting responses, and keeping longer-term goals available, while immediate urges compete for attention. It does not act alone, and it is not a simple control center sitting above the rest of the brain. Emotional and reward-related systems continue to contribute information about what feels desirable, threatening, frustrating, or important. Patient behavior seems to emerge from cooperation among these systems, rather than from one part of the brain defeating another. Imagine waiting for the result of an application. The outcome matters. There may be a strong urge to refresh an inbox repeatedly, search for hidden clues, or mentally replay everything that happened before the decision. These actions can feel productive because they reduce passivity for a moment. Yet if no new information exists, they cannot change the outcome. The prefrontal systems involved in regulation may help represent a wider picture. The application has been submitted, a response cannot be forced, and attention can be directed elsewhere for now. This kind of regulation depends heavily on available resources. When the brain is rested and the environment is calm, it may be easier to hold a larger picture in mind. Under stress, the immediate signal can become louder. Researchers suggest that stress may shift behavior toward faster, more habitual, or more immediately rewarding responses. When the body is already preparing for difficulty, waiting can feel less like an empty interval and more like another demand. Fatigue can have a similar effect. After a long day, even a slow elevator or a minor delay in a conversation can become unexpectedly irritating. Sleep loss has been associated with changes in attention, emotional regulation, and decision-making, all of which may affect patience. The exhausted brain is not necessarily making a philosophical judgment that the delay is unacceptable. It may simply have less capacity to soften the first wave of frustration. Hunger can narrow that capacity too. When the body requires energy, immediate needs naturally gain importance. An abstract future benefit may feel less compelling than something available now. Behavioral research has repeatedly shown that decisions about delay are influenced by bodily state and context. The same person may be patient in one situation and restless in another, not because their character has changed overnight, but because the conditions supporting regulation have changed. This helps explain why patience is better understood as a capacity than as a permanent personality label. Some people may have more stable tendencies toward waiting comfortably, but patience still rises and falls. It can be affected by uncertainty, fatigue, emotion, experience, and the perceived fairness of the situation. Even very patient people have moments when delay feels difficult. The nervous system is responsive, not fixed. There is also an important difference between regulating an urge and pretending the urge is absent. If someone is waiting for news and feels anxious, telling themselves that they should not care may add another layer of struggle. The first discomfort comes from uncertainty. The second comes from arguing with the fact that uncertainty feels uncomfortable. Acceptance does not mean liking the delay. It means allowing the reaction to exist without turning it into a problem that must immediately be removed. This can be surprisingly practical. A person may notice the impulse to check a message and simply identify it as an impulse. The body leans forward. Attention narrows. Perhaps the hand reaches toward the phone. There is no need to criticize any of this. The reaction is understandable, but between the sensation and the action, a small pause may appear. That pause is where flexibility begins. Slow physical rhythms can make this pause easier to notice. Breathing is one example, but so is walking, stretching, sweeping a floor, or preparing tea without rushing. Repetitive, gentle movements give the nervous system a predictable sequence. They do not erase the unresolved outcome, but they reduce the number of new decisions competing for attention. The body receives a quieter message. This moment can continue safely for a little longer. A calm environment can have a similar effect. Soft light, lower noise, fewer alerts, and less visual clutter reduce the amount of information demanding immediate orientation. In a busy environment, the brain is repeatedly asked to respond. Look here, decide this, check that, move on. The entire atmosphere can begin to feel urgent. In a quieter setting, urgency has less external reinforcement. This may be one reason natural scenes can feel especially compatible with patience. A river provides movement without demanding a response. Clouds change position without asking to be followed. Leaves shift in the wind without creating an obligation. The sensory world remains active, but it does not insist that every change be acted upon. Consider mist resting over a lake before sunrise. At first, the far shore is almost invisible. Then, as the air slowly warms, the mist thins. Small openings appear. A dark line of trees becomes clearer. There is no moment when the lake commands the mist to leave, and no obvious boundary between hidden and revealed. The scene changes because countless small physical conditions are changing together. Human uncertainty often feels harder because the mind wants that boundary. It wants the moment when not knowing becomes knowing. But before that moment arrives, the nervous system can still learn to inhabit partial visibility. It can respond to what is known, leave room for what is not, and resist the urge to manufacture certainty, simply because certainty would feel more comfortable. Patience does not make the far shore appear sooner. It changes how much struggle is added while the mist is still there. That reduction in struggle can matter, because the mind often spends more energy resisting uncertainty than uncertainty itself requires. A delayed outcome may be unavoidable, but the internal argument around it can expand. The answer should already be here. This should be moving faster. I should know by now. These thoughts are understandable, especially when the result feels important. Yet they can turn a simple absence of information into a continuous confrontation with the present moment. Patience does not remove the desire for resolution. It allows the desire to exist without demanding that reality change at the same speed as the mind. Researchers studying emotion regulation often distinguish between changing a situation and changing the way attention and interpretation are organized around it. Sometimes action is possible and useful. A person can send a necessary follow-up, ask for clarification, prepare for several outcomes, or decide when they will stop waiting. At other times, the process is temporarily beyond direct control. In those moments, repeatedly attempting to control what cannot yet be controlled may increase tension without creating new information. The difference between patience and passivity becomes especially clear here. Passivity can mean failing to act when action is needed. Patience, by contrast, may involve carefully deciding what can be influenced and what must unfold on its own schedule. A scientist waiting for a culture to grow does not abandon the experiment. Measurements are prepared, conditions are maintained, and observations are made at appropriate intervals. But the biological process itself cannot be persuaded to move faster merely because the result is desired. The same is true in many forms of skilled work. A craftsperson applying layers of finish to wood must allow one layer to settle before the next is added. Clay needs time to lose moisture. Bread requires fermentation. Certain materials must cool, cure, dry, or rest. Expertise often includes learning where effort is useful and where further interference becomes counterproductive. More action is not always more progress. This is a subtle lesson for the nervous system, because action often feels reassuring. Doing something can reduce the helplessness of waiting. Even when the action has little effect, refreshing a page, checking a tracking number, reopening an application portal, or looking again at the same unanswered conversation can create a brief sense of control. The mind is no longer simply waiting, it is performing a behavior. But if the behavior cannot alter the underlying process, the relief may disappear quickly. One possible explanation is that checking temporarily resolves uncertainty at a very small scale. For a moment, you know the current state, there is still no update. Then uncertainty immediately returns about what will happen next. Because the checking produced a tiny piece of information, the brain may learn that another check could be useful too. The cycle can repeat long after it stops being helpful. Creating predictable boundaries around checking can sometimes make waiting easier. Instead of asking the nervous system to resist indefinitely, a person might decide that there will be another opportunity to look later. This gives uncertainty a container. The outcome remains unknown, but the next action is known. There is a difference between not knowing when a reply will arrive and knowing when you will next choose to check for it. Known intervals often feel gentler than unbounded ones because they reduce the need for constant monitoring. Attention can temporarily release the task. The brain does not need to remain quite so alert for every possible signal. This principle appears in many ordinary settings. Waiting for a bus may feel easier when the schedule is reliable. Waiting for food may feel easier when someone says it will take 20 minutes. Even a relatively long delay can sometimes feel more tolerable than a shorter delay with no clear estimate. There is an interesting relationship here between prediction and calm. Predictability does not necessarily make an experience pleasant, but it can reduce the number of possibilities the brain must keep active. When the shape of a delay is known, fewer resources are spent wondering whether something has gone wrong. When the duration is unknown, the mind may repeatedly update its expectations, especially if the expected event seems overdue. This is why uncertainty can make minutes feel emotionally heavier, without patience becoming merely a question of time perception. The important feature is not simply how long the interval seems. It is what the interval means. A 10-minute delay with a clear explanation can feel very different from 10 minutes of silence after something was expected to happen immediately. The clock measures the same duration. The nervous system encounters two different situations, and yet, attention still influences the experience. If every passing moment is evaluated in relation to the missing outcome, the delay remains vivid. If attention is permitted to widen, the waiting becomes one element within a larger field of experience. There may be warmth in the room, distant traffic, the movement of curtains, or the changing color of evening light. The unresolved event has not disappeared. It has simply stopped occupying the entire mental landscape. Outside, tides perform a much older version of this widening and returning. Water advances slowly across a shore, then withdraws. The movement is governed by relationships among Earth, Moon, Sun, coastline, and ocean basin. No single wave contains the whole cycle. A person standing beside the sea may notice only that the water has reached one stone and later another. The larger rhythm becomes visible only when enough time is allowed to pass. Many natural processes are easier to understand when they are not judged. Moment by moment. A tide, viewed every few seconds, appears mostly repetitive. A plant watched continuously seems almost still. A cloud may look suspended until you glance away and later discover that the sky has changed. Human waiting can be similar. Close inspection magnifies every interval in which nothing seems to happen. A wider view reveals that change may still be accumulating. Patience allows that wider view to remain available. It does not require optimism, and it does not promise that every awaited outcome will be favorable. It simply creates a little distance between the fact that something has not happened yet and the conclusion that the present moment must therefore be fought. Somewhere beyond a dark shoreline, the tide is already turning long before its change is obvious from the sand. The water does not need to announce the moment when retreat becomes return. It follows a rhythm larger than any single wave, moving steadily through a process that becomes clear only with time. A rhythm larger than any single moment can be difficult to feel when daily life is organized around speed. Much of the modern environment has become extraordinarily efficient at reducing delay. A message can cross continents almost instantly. A question can be answered in seconds. Music begins on demand. A map redraws itself as soon as a route changes. Food, entertainment, information, conversation, and distraction can often be reached with only a few movements of the hand. These conveniences are useful, and there is nothing inherently wrong with them, but they can quietly reshape expectation. When so many ordinary desires are answered quickly, waiting begins to stand out more sharply. The brain learns from patterns. When an action is repeatedly followed by an immediate result, that timing becomes part of what is expected. Tap, response. Swipe, novelty. Search, answer. Send, acknowledgement. The connection between action and outcome becomes very short. Then, when a process does not follow that familiar rhythm, the nervous system may interpret the gap as unusually noticeable. A page that once seemed fast may feel slow after experiencing a faster one. A reply that would once have seemed perfectly ordinary after several hours can begin to feel delayed when most conversations unfold in minutes. Researchers studying reward and attention suggest that rapid, variable streams of information can be especially good at pulling attention back. Not every refresh produces something interesting, but sometimes it does. Not every notification matters, but occasionally, one contains exactly the information a person has been hoping for. That uncertainty can make checking persistent. The next small reward is unpredictable enough to remain compelling. This pattern is not very different from other forms of reward learning. When outcomes arrive inconsistently, the brain continues testing whether the next attempt will be the successful one. In everyday digital life, this can mean opening an app with no clear purpose, refreshing a feed that was checked moments earlier, or unlocking a phone almost automatically during a pause. Each action is small, but together they can reduce the number of moments in which attention simply remains where it is. Patience depends partly on being able to remain with a moment that is not immediately changing. If every minor pause is replaced by novelty, that experience becomes less practiced. A person waiting for a kettle to boil may begin scrolling. A short elevator ride becomes an opportunity to check messages. A minute before a meeting begins is filled with headlines. None of these behaviors is serious by itself. The larger effect is simply that fewer quiet intervals remain available for the nervous system to experience. Waiting without stimulation, and yet attention is adaptable. The same learning processes that make immediacy familiar can also make slower rhythms familiar again. Researchers studying attention restoration have found that less demanding environments, particularly some natural settings, may allow directed attention to recover from sustained effort. The idea is not that nature magically repairs the mind, but that certain environments hold attention gently rather than constantly commanding it. A moving river is interesting without being insistent. Its surface changes continuously, but there is no urgent new piece of information to process. Leaves moving in a breeze offer variation without requiring a decision. Mist lifting from a lake can hold the eye while asking almost nothing in return. This kind of gentle engagement may give the systems used for focused, effortful attention a quieter interval. Slower activities can work in a similar way. Watching rain move down a window, tending to a plant, walking without checking a destination every few minutes, or sitting near water can provide enough sensory change to prevent complete boredom without creating constant demand. Attention is occupied, but loosely. It has room to wander and return. This returning matters. Patience is sometimes imagined as maintaining perfect calm for a long period, but that is rarely how it feels from the inside. Attention drifts toward the awaited outcome. Restlessness appears. The urge to check becomes strong. Then attention returns to something else. A few minutes later, the cycle may happen again. Patience is often this repeated return rather than an uninterrupted state. The same is true of emotional regulation. Calm does not mean that frustration never rises. The body may still become tense when a delay extends longer than expected. Thoughts may still become impatient. What changes is the relationship to those reactions. They are allowed to pass through without automatically deciding what happens next. A slower environment can make that process easier because fewer signals are competing with it. Imagine sitting beside a lake in the early morning. Mist hangs just above the water, softening the opposite shore. The scene is not completely still. Water shifts against reeds. A bird moves somewhere beyond view. Air currents gradually thin the mist. Yet no single change demands immediate response. After a while, the nervous system may begin to match the pace of what it is observing. Breathing becomes less hurried. The eyes stop searching so quickly. Attention settles into longer stretches. This does not happen because the lake teaches a lesson in words. It happens because the sensory environment offers a different temporal pattern from the one produced by constant alerts and rapid switching. Natural rhythms can reveal something that highly responsive environments often conceal. Many processes remain active, even when nothing dramatic is happening. Mist can be thinning long before the far shore becomes visible. Ice at the edge of a pond can be changing structure before a clear patch of water appears. Fruit can be accumulating sugars and changing pigments while looking almost identical from one afternoon to the next. The human mind often wants evidence at the same speed as effort. If something matters, it can feel reassuring to see immediate progress. But many forms of change do not provide that reassurance. Learning may deepen before confidence appears. A difficult decision may become clearer only after several quiet days. Recovery from fatigue may happen gradually. An idea may need to remain unfinished before its shape becomes obvious. Patience allows these hidden intervals to exist without constantly forcing them to prove themselves. At the beginning of spring, a sheet of ice may still cover most of a quiet pond. Sunlight reaches it each day. Air temperatures rise and fall. Water moves beneath the surface. Along the edges, the ice becomes thinner, then translucent, then breaks into small, clear openings. From one moment to the next, almost nothing seems different. Across many moments, winter is already loosening its hold. Change does not always arrive as an event. Sometimes it arrives as 1,000 changes too small to notice separately. 1,000 changes too small to notice separately can be difficult for a mind that is looking for confirmation. Human attention is naturally drawn toward visible outcomes. A completed task can be checked off. A message can be answered. A door can open. A decision can be announced. These moments provide clear evidence that the waiting is over. But before that evidence appears, progress may be real and still remain hidden. This is one reason delayed rewards can be so challenging. An immediate reward is easy for the brain to connect with the action that produced it. The sequence is short and clear. Something is done and something happens. With a delayed reward, the connection stretches across time. Effort may come today, while the benefit arrives weeks, months, or years later. During the gap, competing rewards can appear, each offering something more immediate. Behavioral scientists sometimes describe this in terms of delay discounting. In many situations, people tend to value rewards less when those rewards are farther away in time. A small benefit available now can feel more compelling than a larger benefit in the future, even when the future option might be preferable under calmer reflection. This tendency is not irrational in every context. Future outcomes are often less certain. Circumstances can change. Resources may be needed now. The brain is balancing timing, value, confidence, and present need all at once. Patience becomes easier when the future feels believable. If a person has good reason to think that effort will eventually lead somewhere, waiting may feel more worthwhile. If promises have repeatedly failed, the opposite response can be understandable. Delayed gratification is therefore not simply a test of willpower. It is influenced by what the nervous system has learned about whether waiting tends to be rewarded. This gives patients a quiet connection to self-trust, not trust in another person, which belongs to a different kind of social prediction, but confidence in one's own ability to remain steady enough to respond when more information arrives. A patient person does not need to know exactly how an unresolved situation will end. They may only need to know that they can meet the next stage when it comes. That confidence can reduce the urge to solve every possible future in advance. If an answer is expected tomorrow, the mind may try to rehearse 10 versions of tomorrow tonight. It may prepare for success, disappointment, delay, confusion, and outcomes that are unlikely ever to happen. Some preparation is useful. Beyond a certain point, however, prediction becomes repetition rather than planning. Patience can interrupt that repetition by separating what needs action now from what can only be handled later. Perhaps one email should be sent. Perhaps a deadline should be clarified. Perhaps a boundary should be established. Once the useful action is complete, the remaining work may simply belong to time. This is why healthy patience is not endless endurance. There are circumstances in which continued waiting becomes harmful, unfair, or unsafe. A person does not need to remain indefinitely in a situation that is damaging simply to prove that they can tolerate uncertainty. Patience can include deciding that enough time has passed. It can include leaving, asking directly, changing direction, or protecting a boundary. In this sense, patience is active because it depends on judgment. The question is not always, how long can I tolerate this? But what response fits this stage of the process? Sometimes the answer is to move. Sometimes it is to prepare. Sometimes it is to stop. And sometimes it is to let the process continue without interference. People who work closely with slow processes often become skilled at recognizing these differences. Gardeners water, prune, protect, and observe. But they cannot pull on a stem to make it taller. Craftspeople can shape material carefully, but many materials require intervals of drying, cooling, curing, resting, or settling. Scientists may spend months preparing an experiment and then encounter periods when the most accurate thing to do is simply collect data without forcing a conclusion. Observation itself requires patience. A researcher watching animal behavior, a geologist studying gradual erosion, or an astronomer waiting for the right conditions must sometimes remain attentive without creating the event they hope to observe. Too much interference would distort the very process being studied. Knowledge arrives partly through restraint. There is something gentle in this form of attention. It is not empty waiting. It is a readiness that does not need to become agitation. The observer remains present for change, without demanding that change become visible immediately. A gardener may notice this while looking at a branch where fruit is still hard and green. From one day to the next, the difference is difficult to see. Yet inside the fruit, chemistry is changing. Starches are being transformed. Aromatic compounds develop. Pigments shift. Cells soften. Warm days and cool nights influence a process that cannot be compressed into a single afternoon. Picking the fruit too early does not reward impatience with faster ripening. It simply interrupts the sequence. The same principle appears in many systems. Some stages exist because the next stage depends on them. Roots need time to establish before a plant can support greater growth. Skill needs repetition before movements become reliable. Complex decisions may need distance before motion and information can settle into proportion. Patience does not guarantee that every slow process ends well. Seeds sometimes fail to germinate. Experiments sometimes produce unclear results. Plans sometimes change, but patience allows reality enough room to reveal what it is actually doing, rather than requiring an immediate answer merely to relieve the discomfort of not knowing. On a quiet branch in late summer, fruit may hang almost motionless beneath the leaves. Nothing about the scene suggests urgency. Sunlight arrives, fades, and returns. Water moves upward through the tree. Sugars accumulate little by little. The branch bends almost imperceptibly under growing weight, and when the fruit is finally ready, there is no need to explain all the hours that came before it. The ripeness is simply the visible edge of a process that has been continuing quietly for a long time. The visible edge of a long process can easily be mistaken for the whole process. A flower seems to open in the morning, although the changes that made opening possible began long before the petals moved. A decision may suddenly feel clear after days of uncertainty, even though the mind has been quietly comparing possibilities in the background. A difficult skill may appear to improve all at once after a period when practice seemed to produce very little. What looks sudden is often the moment when accumulated change finally becomes noticeable. This can make patience difficult during the middle stages, when effort is present, but evidence is weak. The brain likes feedback because feedback helps it update predictions. When a result is visible, it becomes easier to decide whether a strategy is working. When nothing obvious changes, uncertainty remains. The mind may begin to ask whether more action is needed, whether the process has stalled, or whether the original goal should be abandoned. Sometimes those questions are useful. Patience should not prevent adjustment when evidence suggests that a different approach is needed. But there are also situations in which the absence of visible progress is not evidence of failure. It may simply be a feature of the timescale involved. This distinction is easier to understand in nature, because natural processes often make their timescales impossible to negotiate. A seed cannot be argued into germinating faster. A forest cannot be instructed to mature by next week. A river does not deepen a valley because an observer is impatient to see the result. The physical world proceeds through conditions, interactions, and limits that do not respond to human urgency. There can be something calming in remembering this. Not because human concerns are unimportant, but because urgency is not a universal law. Much of the world is changing at speeds that would look like stillness if observed for only a few minutes. Consider a river moving around stones. At close range, the water is constantly active. Small currents bend around rough surfaces, combine again, separate, and form gentle eddies in protected spaces. The river seems fluid and immediate, yet one of its larger effects, the reshaping of the landscape, may unfold across centuries or much longer. Sediment is lifted grain by grain. Rock surfaces are worn down by repeated contact. Channels shift. Banks soften and rebuild. A change too small to notice in one afternoon can become a valley when repeated across enough time. Patience at the human scale is not the same as geological time, of course. But larger timescales can change the emotional meaning of delay. A day that feels unbearably slow when attention is fixed on one unanswered question becomes very small when imagined beside a river that has been following its course for thousands of years. The question still matters. The perspective simply becomes wider. This widening can reduce the sense that a delay is personally directed at us. Human beings naturally interpret events in relation to their own goals. If traffic slows, the delay is happening to the journey. If rain interrupts a plan, the weather becomes an obstacle. If a reply has not arrived, the silence can feel connected to the person waiting. But many delays arise from processes that have no personal intention at all. Systems are busy. Conditions are incomplete. Other events must happen first. Information may be moving through a chain that cannot be seen. Natural rhythms make this impersonality easier to feel. Clouds crossing a moonlit sky are not late. A tide is not being stubborn when it remains low. Winter is not refusing spring. These descriptions would sound strange because the processes have no relationship to human expectation. They follow conditions rather than wishes. The nervous system, however, often experiences unresolved outcomes emotionally before it explains them logically. A delay can create tension first, and interpretation comes afterward. This is why understanding that something is normal does not always make the waiting immediately comfortable. The body may still react. Patience, therefore, includes allowing knowledge and sensation to move at different speeds. A person may understand perfectly well that a response could take several days while still feeling an urge to check after several hours. The rational explanation does not need to erase the emotional response. It can simply remain nearby, offering another piece of information. Over time, repeated experiences of waiting safely may help those two layers become less distant from each other. The nervous system learns that not every unresolved situation requires constant vigilance. An urge can appear without producing action. A delay can extend without becoming dangerous. The outcome may eventually arrive, or the person may decide what to do without it. This learning can be quiet enough to escape notice. Perhaps someone once checked every few minutes and now checks every hour. Perhaps a slow queue still feels irritating, but the irritation fades sooner. Perhaps uncertainty still produces restless thoughts, but they no longer occupy the entire evening. Patience rarely arrives as a permanent state of serenity. More often, it appears as slightly greater flexibility. That flexibility can protect attention. Instead of being repeatedly captured by the same unresolved event, attention becomes available for other things. A conversation can be heard more fully. A meal can be tasted. A page can be read without returning to the same sentence. A room can become a room again instead of merely the place where someone waits for news. This matters because attention is not only a tool for accomplishing tasks. It is also one of the ways experience becomes rich. When all attention is pulled toward what has not yet happened, what is happening can become thin and distant. A slow walk through a forest offers another rhythm. The trees do not present themselves as unfinished because they are still growing. An ancient trunk may be adding a narrow ring beneath its bark, one thin layer among hundreds. New wood forms quietly around old wood. Water rises through vessels hidden from view. Leaves exchange gases with the air. Fungi and roots trade nutrients underground. Nothing in the scene needs to announce progress for progress to be occurring. The forest is full of incomplete processes, yet it does not look incomplete. Perhaps this is one of the gentlest ways to understand patience. An unresolved moment does not have to be treated as an empty one. Something can still be underway even before its result becomes visible. The mind can remain interested, careful, and ready without standing at the edge of every second, asking whether the future has arrived yet. Above the forest, clouds move slowly across the moon. For a while, the light dims, then returns between their edges. Nothing has been lost. Nothing has been hurried. The sky simply continues changing at the speed of the air. The speed of the air is rarely something the mind needs to negotiate with. A cloud may cover the moon for several minutes, and there is nothing to solve. The light will return when the cloud moves on. In that simple scene, waiting has no argument attached to it. Human waiting is often more complicated because the outcome carries meaning. A reply may affect a relationship. A decision may alter a plan. A result may confirm or disappoint a hope. The mind is not merely waiting for an event. It is waiting for information about what that event will mean. This is where patience can create space for better decisions. When an outcome feels urgent, the first impulse is often to reduce uncertainty as quickly as possible. That might mean sending another message, changing a plan too soon, accepting an explanation before enough evidence has appeared, or choosing the first available option simply because it ends the waiting. Immediate action can feel relieving because it replaces uncertainty with movement. But relief and good judgment are not always the same thing. Researchers studying decision-making suggest that emotional arousal, time pressure, and uncertainty can influence how people evaluate options. When the nervous system is activated, immediate consequences may become more prominent. A fast answer can feel more attractive than a careful one. Patience may help by allowing the first wave of urgency to soften enough for additional information to enter awareness. This does not require becoming detached or endlessly analytical. Sometimes a few minutes are enough. Sometimes the pause is an evening, a night of sleep, or several days while more evidence develops. During that interval, the mind may begin to notice details that were invisible when it was focused only on ending uncertainty. An important distinction appears here between patience and indecision. Indecision can involve remaining stuck because no option feels safe enough to choose. Patience is different. A patient pause has a purpose, even if the purpose is simply to let a process reveal more of itself. When the available information is sufficient, patience can end in action. In this sense, patience is compatible with boundaries. A person can decide, for example, that they will wait until a certain day for an answer, and then make another plan. The outcome remains unresolved in the meantime, but the waiting is no longer limitless. There is a structure around it. The brain has something stable to hold on to. Structure can be especially useful because unknown waiting times are often harder than known ones. If the end of a delay cannot be predicted, attention may remain partly prepared for change at any moment. but a self-chosen boundary can reduce that constant readiness. The nervous system still does not know what will happen, yet it knows what the person intends to do if nothing happens. This may be one quiet form of self-trust, not certainty about the future, but confidence that there will be a response when the future arrives. Self-trust also changes the emotional meaning of patience. Without it, waiting can feel like surrendering control. With it, waiting can become a deliberate choice to avoid acting before action is useful. The person remains involved. They simply stop trying to force information that does not yet exist. There are many natural parallels to this kind of readiness. At the beginning of a season, changes are often present long before they become obvious. In late winter, daylight gradually lengthens. Soil temperatures shift slowly. Dormant buds respond to changing conditions. Insects, birds, fungi, and plants react to cues that accumulate across days and weeks. Spring does not begin in a single instant. It emerges through countless physical and biological adjustments. To someone watching closely, the landscape may appear unchanged for a long time. Bare branches remain bare. Frost still settles overnight. The ground may look almost exactly as it did a week earlier. And yet the system is already moving. Forests depend on this gradual timing. A tree that opened leaves during every brief winter, warm spell would risk damage when cold returned. Many organisms respond not to one signal, but to combinations of temperature, light, moisture, and seasonal history. Their timing is shaped by thresholds and accumulated conditions. Human patience is more flexible and conscious than these biological responses, but the comparison is useful. Waiting is sometimes an intelligent response to incomplete conditions. The next step is not being avoided. It is simply not ready yet. This can be difficult in environments that reward constant visible productivity. A pause may look like nothing is happening. Reflection may look like delay. Recovery may look like inactivity. Yet the nervous system itself often depends on periods in which effort is reduced. Attention cannot remain maximally engaged without cost. Muscles cannot stay contracted forever. Sleep, rest, and quiet states are part of how complex systems continue functioning. Slow attention can be restorative, partly because it reduces the demand to respond. When looking at a forest canopy or a quiet stretch of water, there is no stream of decisions arriving every few seconds. The eyes can move without hunting for a result. Sounds appear and fade without requiring interpretation. The brain remains awake, but it is not constantly being asked to choose. This softer mode of attention may make waiting easier because it gives the nervous system another rhythm to follow. Instead of measuring every moment by what has not happened, awareness begins to include what is already here. A leaf loosens from a branch. A small current turns around a stone. The air cools after sunset. Somewhere beneath the ground, roots continue extending through dark soil. None of these processes is dramatic enough to demand attention, yet each one is part of a larger change. Across a forest, the seasons do not arrive all at once. One tree changes before another. Some leaves remain green while others fade. A few fall early. Others hold on through several cold nights. The whole landscape shifts gradually, without needing every part to move at the same moment. Patience can contain this same unevenness. Some parts of the mind may be ready to wait, while another part remains restless. Calm may come and go. An urge may return after seeming to disappear. None of this means the capacity has failed. The season is still changing, even while some leaves remain. Some leaves remain while others have already fallen. And the landscape does not need to become uniform before the season can continue. Human patience is often like this. One part of the mind may understand that a process needs time, while another part keeps asking whether anything has changed. A person can know that repeated checking will not help and still feel the pull to check. They can choose to wait and still notice irritation. Patience does not require all of these reactions to disappear at once. It allows them to exist without giving every reaction the final word. This is important because people sometimes imagine patience as a calm personality that never becomes restless. In reality, patience may be much more dynamic. It can involve becoming impatient, noticing it, and returning. Attention narrows toward the missing outcome, then widens again. The body tenses, then settles. The urge to act becomes strong, then loses some of its force. This repeated returning may be closer to how regulation actually works than the idea of maintaining perfect serenity. Researchers studying emotional regulation often emphasize that emotions unfold over time. They rise, change, and fade rather than remaining fixed at one intensity. An urge can feel permanent when it is at its strongest, but if it is not continually reinforced, it often shifts. Patience can mean allowing enough time for that shift to occur before making a decision. This does not mean waiting indefinitely whenever emotion is present. Some situations require quick action, but many ordinary moments of impatience are not emergencies. A delayed message, a slow cue, a difficult task, or an unresolved decision may create urgency without actual danger. The nervous system can react as though the discomfort itself must be ended immediately, even when a few minutes of space would make the situation easier to evaluate. One useful part of patience is learning the difference between urgency and importance. Something can be important without needing an immediate response. A result can matter deeply and still be unavailable tonight. A conversation can deserve care and still benefit from waiting until emotions have settled. A plan can be meaningful without needing to be completed in one burst of effort. Modern communication can blur this distinction because immediacy is often technically possible. If a message can be sent instantly, it can begin to feel as though it should be answered instantly. But technological speed does not change the speed of every human process. People still need time to think, work, rest, decide, recover, and understand what they feel. An immediate channel does not guarantee an immediate mind. The same is true of creative and intellectual work. Some ideas appear quickly, but others develop through periods of uncertainty. A scientist may collect evidence for months before a pattern becomes clear. A writer may leave a problem alone and return to it later with a better solution. A craftsperson may learn through repeated small adjustments that are difficult to describe while they are happening. Patience gives these slower forms of integration room to occur. There is a quiet humility in this. The mind recognizes that not every useful process can be consciously forced. Attention can be directed. Conditions can be improved. Effort can be applied. But some kinds of change happen through accumulation rather than command. A root system offers a simple example. Beneath a tree, Roots extend through soil and branching networks, responding to moisture, nutrients, obstacles, and neighboring organisms. Growth does not proceed as a straight line toward a visible goal. A root encounters a stone and changes direction. Fine roots appear where conditions are favorable. Some sections slow while others continue. Above ground, the tree may seem almost unchanged while an enormous amount of adjustment takes place below. Human progress often has the same uneven quality. A person learning to tolerate uncertainty may still have difficult days. Someone practicing slower attention may sometimes spend an evening compulsively switching between screens. A person waiting for an important outcome may feel calm in the morning and restless again at night. Improvement does not always mean that the old response disappears. It may mean that recovery becomes easier. This is why repeated, manageable waiting can matter. Each time the nervous system experiences a delay and discovers that the discomfort can be tolerated, a little more familiarity is created. The person learns that impatience can rise without needing immediate obedience. The uncertainty may remain, but the relationship to it can change. A gentle environment may support this learning. Soft, repetitive sounds, dim light, steady breathing, and slower movement reduce the number of competing signals that say something must happen now. The body is given fewer reasons to prepare for rapid response. In that quieter setting, the gap between urge and action can become easier to notice. Imagine standing beside a river at dusk. The current continues around stones, carrying reflections of the darkening sky. If you watch one patch of water, it is never exactly the same from moment to moment. Yet, the river as a whole feels steady. Motion and steadiness exist together. Patience can hold that same combination. Thoughts may move. Feelings may change. Restlessness may appear and disappear. The inner world does not have to become completely still for a person to remain steady. Above the river, the first stars begin to show through the fading light. Their movement across the sky will be almost impossible to see from one minute to the next. But hour by hour, their positions will change. The sky asks for no attention and gives no reassurance that movement is occurring. It simply continues. For the human mind, this larger rhythm can be comforting. Not everything meaningful announces itself immediately. Not every delay is a failure of progress. Some processes reveal themselves only after enough small moments have accumulated. And patience may be less about becoming someone who never wants things sooner, and more about learning that wanting something sooner does not require the whole present moment to be abandoned. The present moment becomes easier to remain inside when it is not constantly compared with the result that has not arrived. This comparison is one of the quiet engines of impatience. The mind looks at what is happening now, then measures it against what it expected to be happening instead. The reply should have come. The change should be more visible. The journey should be farther along. The problem should already be solved. Each comparison creates a small discrepancy between reality and prediction, and the discrepancy keeps attention active. Prediction is useful because it helps the brain prepare. It allows us to estimate when something is likely to happen, how much effort may be required, and whether a situation is unfolding normally. But predictions are not guarantees. When the world fails to match them, the nervous system has to update. Sometimes the update is easy. A train is 10 minutes late. A new arrival time appears. and the mind adjusts. Sometimes there is no new information, and the prediction remains suspended. That is where patience becomes especially important. Researchers studying predictive processing suggest that the brain is continually using incoming information to revise expectations. When information is incomplete, several possible explanations may remain active at once. This can create a kind of mental instability. The mind cannot settle fully because it has not yet learned which version of events is correct. An unanswered question stays available for further updating. The discomfort is often strongest when the outcome is both important and uncertain. If something matters very little, the mind may release it easily. If the outcome is completely predictable, waiting may be boring, but not especially stressful. When importance and uncertainty meet, attention can become sticky. The brain keeps returning because the missing information might change what happens next. This is why patience is not simply waiting for time to pass. It is tolerating a temporary lack of resolution. The seconds and hours matter because they are the space in which the uncertainty remains open. But the central challenge is the incompleteness itself. There is often an urge to fill that incompleteness with prediction. The mind may invent explanations, rehearse conversations, or decide what another person must be thinking. This can create the sensation of moving forward, even when no new evidence has appeared. Yet imagined certainty is still uncertainty underneath. A story may feel convincing and still be only one possibility. Patience allows the story to remain unfinished a little longer. That unfinished state can sometimes improve accuracy. When people delay judgment until more evidence is available, they have a better chance of updating their beliefs rather than defending the first interpretation that appeared. This is one reason patience can support better decisions. It creates room for information to arrive before conclusions harden. The same principle applies beyond social situations. A gardener does not decide that a plant has failed simply because no shoot appeared on the first warm day. A scientist does not discard a hypothesis because one early observation is unclear. A craftsperson does not judge the final color of a surface before the finish has dried. In each case, the process contains stages in which interpretation would be premature. There is a quiet form of intelligence in recognizing those stages. It requires knowing when the most accurate response is not another action, but continued observation. This can be uncomfortable because observation offers less immediate relief than intervention. Action creates a sense of agency. Waiting can feel as though control has been surrendered. But restraint can itself be an intentional act. To leave a process alone when interference would make it worse is not passivity. It is a decision based on timing. Nature contains countless examples of timing that cannot be separated from outcome. Fruit ripens through biochemical changes that depend on temperature, sunlight, hormones, and the plant's own developmental stage. Ice melts when enough energy has accumulated to change its state. A forest shifts from winter towards spring through many interacting thresholds. None of these processes can be reduced to a command to hurry. Even rivers, which appear constantly in motion, rely on patience at a different scale. Water works against stone through repetition. Sediment moves a little at a time. A channel deepens. Not because one current is powerful enough to reshape the landscape in an afternoon, but because the same physical interactions continue for longer than human attention can easily imagine. This wider perspective can soften the feeling that slow change is somehow defective. Speed is useful in some systems, but it is not the measure of whether a process is meaningful. A heartbeat is rhythmic rather than instantaneous. Sleep develops through stages. Forests mature over decades. Continents move by distances too small to notice in a year. The human brain, meanwhile, is adapted to respond to much shorter timescales. It notices sudden movement, immediate rewards, social signals, and nearby changes. This sensitivity helps us function, but it can make slower processes emotionally difficult to inhabit. The mind keeps asking for evidence at a pace that the process cannot provide. Patience is one way of adjusting the scale of attention. Instead of asking what has changed in the last minute, attention can sometimes widen to the day, the week, the season, or simply to the fact that a process is still underway. This does not require pretending that the outcome will be good. It only changes the interval over which progress is judged. On a hillside in early spring, snow may remain in shaded hollows long after the air has begun to soften. During the day, a thin edge of meltwater forms. At night, some of it freezes again. The boundary between winter and spring moves forward, then seems to retreat. From one morning to the next, the difference may be almost invisible, but sunlight keeps returning. The soil warms by fractions. Water begins to move beneath the surface. Roots that have waded through cold months become active again. The season is not uncertain about whether it is progressing. Only the observer, looking too closely, may fail to see the change. Looking too closely can make slow change seem absent, and this is one reason patience often becomes easier when attention is allowed to widen. A process that appears stalled at the scale of minutes may become obvious across days. A landscape that seems unchanging across a season may look completely different across decades. Human nervous systems are built to notice what is nearby and immediate, but many meaningful processes operate on intervals far larger than the ones we naturally monitor. This difference in scale can create unnecessary frustration. The mind asks for evidence according to its own rhythm, while the process follows another. A person may expect emotional clarity in an afternoon, a difficult skill to improve within a few attempts, or a complex situation to resolve as quickly as a simple one. When reality moves more slowly, impatience can arise from the mismatch itself. Patience does not remove the mismatch. It helps the mind stop treating it as proof that something is wrong. There is an important freedom in this. If every slow process is interpreted as a failure, the nervous system remains in a state of correction. It keeps searching for what should be changed, accelerated, or forced. But when slowness is recognized as part of the process, the body may begin to release some of that pressure. The question shifts from why is this not finished to what stage is this actually in? That shift can support better attention. Instead of repeatedly checking for the final result, the mind becomes more capable of noticing intermediate information. A gardener may notice soil moisture, leaf color, or the direction of new growth rather than demanding a flower. A scientist may attend to the quality of observations rather than rushing toward a conclusion. A person recovering focus after a demanding period may notice that 10 quiet minutes now feel easier than they did before, even if sustained concentration has not fully returned. Small signals often become visible when the need for dramatic proof softens. This matters in emotional life as well. Feelings rarely change in a straight line. Restlessness can decrease, return, and decrease again. Confidence can improve slowly, then disappear for a day. A difficult decision can feel clearer in the morning and confused again by evening. Patience allows these fluctuations to belong to the process, rather than being treated as evidence that no progress has been made. Researchers studying learning and regulation often find that adaptation is gradual and context-dependent. The nervous system updates through repeated experience. One calm wait does not permanently transform a person, just as one restless evening does not erase every previous success. What matters is the accumulation of many small experiences in which an urge appears, is tolerated, and eventually passes without controlling behavior. This accumulation is easy to underestimate because most of it is not dramatic. A person may simply become slightly less quick to react, slightly more willing to leave a question unanswered overnight, or slightly more comfortable with an activity that offers no immediate reward. These changes may be too subtle to feel important in isolation. Over time, however, they can alter the texture of everyday waiting. The natural world is full of this kind of accumulation. A forest floor forms from countless small deposits of leaves, bark, dust, fungi, roots, and decomposed organic matter. Soil deepens slowly. Water moves minerals through layers beneath the surface. Seeds arrive, germinate, fail, or survive. Young trees grow into gaps left by older ones. The shape of a forest emerges from thousands of events that no single observer could watch from beginning to end. A forest does not need every process to be synchronized. One tree may be growing quickly while another remains dormant. One patch of ground receives sunlight while another stays cool and shaded. Some roots extend. Some branches die back. The larger system continues through variation rather than perfect uniformity. Patience can make room for that same unevenness in human change. Not every part of life needs to advance at the same speed. One problem may resolve while another remains uncertain. One habit of checking may soften while another form of impatience remains. The nervous system can be learning even when the learning is incomplete. There is also comfort in realizing that slow processes often depend on interaction rather than control. A river is shaped by gravity, rainfall, rock, sediment, vegetation, and terrain. A season emerges from orbital geometry, sunlight, atmosphere, and local conditions. A tree grows through relationships with water, soil, fungi, temperature, and light. No single element commands the whole. Human waiting can feel less personal when seen this way. Many outcomes depend on networks of causes that extend far beyond one person's effort. A delayed decision may involve other schedules, other people, missing information, or conditions that have not yet aligned. Recognizing this does not make every delay acceptable, but it can reduce the feeling that the entire situation is a direct reflection of personal success or failure. Sometimes the process is simply larger than the individual. This perspective becomes even clearer when looking at geological change. A river can move grains of sand that seem insignificant in the hand. One flood shifts a bank slightly. One season exposes a new surface. Water enters cracks in rock, freezes, expands, and loosens fragments. Wind carries particles away. Gravity pulls material downward. Across immense spans of time, cliffs retreat, valleys widen, and landscapes are rewritten. No single moment contains the transformation. The same river may seem unchanged from one evening to the next. Moonlight reflects from almost the same bend. Stones rest in nearly the same places. Water continues around them with the same low sound. Yet the landscape is not still. It is changing at a rate too slow for the eye to measure casually. There is something peaceful about this scale. It reminds the mind that change does not need to be visible in order to be real. A process can be active without producing immediate proof. And in the quiet hours of night, that may be enough. The answer does not need to arrive in this minute. The next stage does not need to announce itself. Some things can remain unfinished while the world continues gently around them, carrying each small change forward until, much later, the difference can finally be seen. Much later, when the difference can finally be seen, the mind often forgets how gradual the path was. A season appears to have changed. A tree that was bare is suddenly green. A familiar hillside has become covered with summer growth. The transition feels obvious only in retrospect. While it was happening, the changes were scattered across mornings, afternoons, cold nights, warmer winds, longer days, and countless small biological adjustments. This is one of the quiet lessons of patience. Visible change is often only the final surface of an invisible accumulation. The seasons make this especially clear because they do not move according to human urgency. Spring does not arrive because people are tired of winter, and autumn does not slow because someone wants summer to remain. Seasonal change emerges from the changing relationship between earth and sunlight, modified by atmosphere, geography, ocean, soil, and living systems. The process is immense, but its effects arrive through very small events. A little more light reaches a branch. A patch of snow receives enough warmth to soften. A bud responds to accumulated temperature. Insects become active. Soil organisms change their pace. Leaves open one by one. Later in the year, daylight begins to shorten again. Pigments shift. Growth slows. Sap moves differently through the tree. A forest gradually changes color without any single moment in which summer becomes autumn. The human mind often prefers boundaries. It likes beginnings and endings because they simplify prediction. Waiting becomes harder when those boundaries are unclear. Yet many natural processes have fuzzy edges. Dawn is not a switch. Fog does not disappear all at once. A tide does not reverse in a way that can always be seen from one wave to the next. Learning to tolerate these unclear edges may be one part of becoming more patient. An unresolved situation also has a fuzzy boundary. It is not finished, but it may not be completely unchanged either. Information can be developing elsewhere. Circumstances can be shifting. The person waiting may themselves be changing in relation to the outcome. What felt intolerable yesterday may feel more manageable today, even though the external situation remains the same. This internal adaptation is easy to miss. Researchers studying stress and coping suggest that people can adjust to ongoing conditions when those conditions are manageable and when there is enough opportunity for regulation and recovery. The nervous system does not simply produce one reaction and hold it forever. It continually recalibrates. Attention moves. Expectations change. Emotional intensity can soften. New routines form around what once felt like a disruption. Patience may partly depend on allowing this recalibration to happen. If the mind repeatedly reactivates urgency, the body may keep receiving the message that the unresolved situation requires immediate attention. If attention can periodically return to ordinary life, the nervous system has opportunities to learn something different. The uncertainty is still present, but the rest of the world continues. Food can still be prepared. A conversation can still be enjoyed. The evening can still become quiet. Sleep can still arrive. This does not make the unresolved outcome unimportant. It simply prevents one incomplete process from becoming the definition of every moment around it. And sometimes the most patient action is to stop measuring progress so closely. Watching a plant every hour does not reveal growth very well. Checking the same problem repeatedly does not always create insight. Monitoring an emotional state can sometimes make every small fluctuation feel significant. A little distance can allow patterns to become clearer. Natural observation often works this way. A person may walk the same path through a forest every week and gradually notice that the light has changed. Ferns have appeared where the ground was bare. A stream has narrowed after several dry weeks. The canopy has thickened. Later, a few leaves begin to fall. The differences become visible because enough time has passed between observations. Patience sometimes involves choosing an interval large enough for change to become detectable. The scale can widen further still. Beyond the seasons, Earth itself moves through long cycles. Coastlines change. Mountains rise and erode. Lakes appear and disappear. Glaciers advance and retreat over spans far longer than a human lifetime. Rock is weathered into sediment. Sediment becomes new rock, and landscapes that seem permanent are only temporary forms in a much slower process. At these scales, the idea of rushing begins to lose meaning. A river flowing through darkness is not late in creating a valley. A mountain is not failing because erosion is measured in fractions of its height. Geological processes do not compare themselves to an imagined faster version of the world. They proceed through physical conditions, one interaction after another, and above this changing earth, another set of rhythms continues. The stars that seem fixed in a quiet night sky are moving. Earth is rotating, carrying the observer through the darkness. Earth is also traveling around the sun. The moon follows its orbit. The planets move along paths shaped by gravity, their positions changing continuously even when the movement is too slow to see directly. If you watch the stars for a few minutes, they appear almost still. Watch long enough, and their motion becomes undeniable. Across the night, they trace slow arcs through the sky. What looked motionless was moving all along. There is comfort in that image, because human waiting often contains the same illusion. When change is too slow for attention to detect, stillness can be mistaken for absence. But absence of visible movement is not always absence of movement. A planet continues through its orbit without needing to be watched. A root continues through soil without needing encouragement. A river continues around stones whether anyone notices or not. And perhaps an unresolved part of life can sometimes be allowed that same quiet space, not forgotten, not abandoned, simply left for a while without being pulled into the center of attention every few moments. Outside, the stars continue their slow crossing above forests, rivers, rooftops, and sleeping fields. Their motion is steady enough to disappear into stillness, and stillness, seen from far enough away, is often only movement that has learned to take its time. Movement that has learned to take its time can be almost indistinguishable from stillness. This is true in the sky, in forests, in rivers, and often in the nervous system as well. A person may feel that nothing is changing because impatience still appears, because uncertainty still returns, or because waiting still feels uncomfortable on some days. Yet patience does not require restlessness to vanish. It may instead reveal itself in smaller shifts, an urge that is noticed before it becomes action, a thought that is allowed to pass without being followed, a delay that once filled an entire evening but now occupies only part of it. These changes are easy to miss because they do not produce the clear reward of completion. There is no final moment in which the brain announces that patience has been achieved. The capacity remains flexible, influenced by sleep, stress, hunger, context, and the importance of whatever is being awaited. On one day, a person may tolerate uncertainty with surprising ease. On another, a minor delay may feel unusually sharp. This variation is not evidence that the earlier calm was false. It is simply what a responsive nervous system looks like. The same nervous system that helps regulate waiting must also respond to real needs. When the body is exhausted, it becomes more sensitive to effort. When stress has accumulated, uncertainty can feel heavier. When attention has been fragmented by hours of rapid switching, a quiet interval may initially feel difficult to inhabit. Patience is therefore supported not only by thought, but by conditions. Rest matters. Predictability matters. Food, safety, and manageable levels of stimulation matter. A calm room can make a delay easier to tolerate than a noisy one filled with interruptions. A rested brain may be better able to keep a future goal in mind while allowing an immediate urge to fade. Slow breathing may make bodily arousal less intense. A simple activity can give attention somewhere gentle to settle. None of these things eliminates uncertainty. They change the environment in which uncertainty is experienced. This is an important distinction because people sometimes respond to impatience by trying to argue themselves out of it. They tell themselves that waiting should not be difficult, that the problem is small, or that they ought to be calmer. But the nervous system does not always respond to reasoning alone. Sometimes it responds more readily to rhythm. A slower breath, a quieter room, a walk without constant checking, warm water moving over the hands, the repeated motion of preparing something simple, the low sound of rain. These experiences provide predictable sensory patterns that can reduce the need for rapid orientation. The body begins to receive fewer signals of urgency, and when urgency softens, attention may become less narrow. Instead of circling only around the expected result, awareness can spread outward again. There may be the faint movement of air against the skin, a distant sound from another room, or the soft change in light as clouds pass across the moon. The awaited outcome still matters, but it no longer needs to occupy every available space. This widening of attention can be understood as a quiet form of freedom. Not freedom from caring, but freedom from having to respond to every moment of wanting. A person can want an answer and still sleep before it arrives. They can hope for change and still live inside the day that exists now. They can prepare for a future outcome without continuously rehearsing it. This is one of the places where patience and self-trust meet. The mind does not have to solve the future tonight if it believes that tomorrow's mind will still be there to respond. Not every possibility needs to be carried at once. Some information belongs to a later version of the day. There is a practical wisdom in this division. A gardener does not perform tomorrow's watering tonight. A scientist does not interpret data that have not yet been collected. A craftsperson does not apply the next layer before the current one has settled. Each stage contains only the work that can actually be done within it. Human thought often tries to cross these boundaries. It rehearses future conversations, invents outcomes, solves hypothetical problems, and tries to experience tomorrow before tomorrow has supplied the necessary information. Sometimes this preparation is useful, but beyond a certain point, it becomes an attempt to escape the discomfort of incompleteness. Patience allows incompleteness to remain incomplete. It permits an open question to stay open, without filling the silence with increasingly elaborate predictions. The mind may still reach toward certainty, of course. That reaching is normal. The important difference is that it can return. Again and again, it can return to the breath that is happening now, to the room that exists now, to the night that does not need to be hurried toward morning. Outside, a flower that has been closed through the evening may begin to loosen almost imperceptibly. Petals respond to temperature, light, moisture, and internal biological rhythms. No observer could identify every tiny adjustment. For a long time, the flower appears unchanged. Then later, the shape is more open. Not because one moment defeated all the moments before it, but because every small change became part of the next. Elsewhere, a river continues beneath the night sky. Its surface moves constantly, while its larger course appears calm. On the shore, stones that have been shaped by years of water rest without any sign of how many currents have passed over them. Above the river, planets continue through long, silent orbits. Their motion is governed by gravity rather than impatience. They do not arrive early or fall behind. Their paths unfold according to conditions that have been operating for billions of years. Against such a scale, human urgency does not become meaningless. A message can still matter. A decision can still matter. A hoped-for change can still matter deeply. But urgency becomes only one scale among many. There is the scale of a notification, measured in seconds. The scale of a night, measured in hours. The scale of a season, measured in months. The scale of a tree, measured in decades. The scale of a river valley, measured in ages. The scale of planets and stars, continuing beyond any single human weight. And for a little while, the mind can rest somewhere among these larger rhythms, remembering that not every process becomes clearer when watched continuously. Some things are easier to meet after they have been given room to unfold. Given room to unfold, many things become quieter, not necessarily finished, not necessarily certain, simply quieter. An unanswered message can remain unanswered for the night. A decision can stay somewhere beyond reach until morning. A change that has not yet appeared can continue developing without being watched. The nervous system may still notice these unfinished things from time to time, but it does not need to hold them at the center of attention continuously. Attention can loosen. The mind can stop standing guard over the future for a little while. This is perhaps the gentlest form of patience, not forcing yourself to stop caring, and not convincing yourself that the outcome does not matter, but allowing the present moment to exist alongside what is unresolved. Researchers studying attention and emotional regulation suggest that flexibility is often more useful than rigid control. The mind does not have to remain perfectly calm. It can wander toward the future and come back. It can notice an urge and let it pass. It can become restless for a moment, then settle again. Regulation is often a process of returning rather than maintaining one flawless state. So, patience does not have to mean never becoming impatient. It can mean recognizing impatience as a temporary condition of the nervous system. There may be a tightening in the body, a desire to check once more, a thought that says something should already have happened. These sensations can arise without becoming instructions. They can be noticed, the way a small wave is noticed on the surface of a river, real, moving, and temporary. The wave passes downstream. Another may follow. The river continues. This repeated return to steadiness is different from suppressing emotion. Nothing has to be pushed away. The restless thought can exist. The disappointment can exist. The hope can exist too. Patience simply makes enough room around these feelings that they do not need to fill the entire landscape. Sometimes the most useful response will still be action. Tomorrow may bring a conversation that needs to happen, a boundary that needs to be set, a plan that needs to change, or a question that deserves an answer. Patience does not ask anyone to remain indefinitely inside a harmful or unacceptable situation. It does not turn endurance into a virtue for its own sake. But tonight, if there is nothing useful left to do, then no additional effort is required simply because the outcome remains incomplete. The next stage can belong to the next stage. There is a seed beneath dark soil that cannot be helped by being uncovered every few minutes to see whether it has grown. Its work depends partly on remaining where it is. Water moves inward. Stored material is broken down and used. A root extends into darkness, not knowing the shape of the world above it. The process does not look impressive from the surface, yet it is enough. Nearby, perhaps, an older tree stands through the night. Beneath its bark, living tissue continues its slow exchange of water and energy. Its roots spread through soil among stones, fungi, minerals, and the fine remains of seasons that have already passed. In another year, the trunk may add one more narrow ring. One ring is almost nothing when viewed alone. Across a lifetime, the rings become the tree. Patience often works at this scale. One moment of not checking again may seem insignificant. One quiet breath may not feel transformative. One evening of allowing a question to remain unanswered may not seem like evidence of anything at all, but the nervous system learns through repetition. Again and again, it discovers that wanting does not always require immediate receiving. That uncertainty can be uncomfortable without being unbearable. That an urge can rise and fall. That attention can return. That tomorrow can contain information that tonight does not have. Outside, the river moves through darkness around stones that have been there longer than any current passing over them. Water touches their surfaces and continues onward. Tiny particles move. Edges soften. The landscape changes, though almost none of that change can be seen in the span of one night. Farther away, the tide advances along another shore. Somewhere else, it is retreating. Ice at the edge of a northern lake is thinning as spring approaches, while in another place, fruit is slowly ripening on a branch. Forests are moving through their seasons. Leaves are forming, fading, falling, becoming soil. The world contains countless processes that are not waiting impatiently to become complete. They are simply occurring. And above all of them, the night sky continues its enormous quiet motion. Earth turns beneath the stars. The moon follows its path. Planets travel through long orbits that no human lifetime can make hurried. The stars themselves move through the galaxy, though to an observer lying beneath them, they may appear perfectly still. Stillness and movement are not always opposites. Sometimes stillness is simply movement viewed gently enough, and perhaps patience can become something similar. Not an empty pause between meaningful events, but a way of remaining present while change is too quiet to see. The answer may come later. The result may become clear in its own time. A process may succeed, change direction, or reveal that something else is needed. None of that has to be solved in this moment. For now, the river can continue without supervision. The roots can grow beneath the soil. The seasons can turn through countless small changes. The stars can move silently overhead. And if restlessness appears once more, there is no need to argue with it. Notice it. Let it be there. Then return gently to the slower rhythm underneath. A breath arriving, a breath leaving. Another moment passing without needing to become anything else. Not everything important happens quickly. Not everything that is changing can already be seen. And for tonight, it is enough to let the unfinished things remain unfinished, while the quiet processes of the world continue on their own. The river keeps moving through the darkness. The roots keep growing where no one can see them. And the night, asking nothing from you, continues slowly toward morning. And morning does not need to be reached any faster than this. The darkness can remain for a while. The questions that belong to tomorrow can stay where they are. Somewhere outside, perhaps beyond the walls of the room, air is moving slowly through branches. A cloud is crossing a portion of the sky. Water is continuing through a stream or beneath the surface of the ground. None of these things is waiting for permission to continue. They are simply following the conditions of this particular night. There is a quiet difference between allowing something to unfold and giving up on it. Giving up closes the possibility. Patience leaves the possibility open without standing over it. A seed beneath the soil is not abandoned because no one watches it through the night. A tree is not neglected because its growth cannot be measured from one hour to the next. A river does not require an observer beside every bend. Processes that have the conditions they need can continue without constant attention. The human mind sometimes forgets this because attention feels like a form of involvement. To keep thinking about a problem can feel as though something is being done. To rehearse an outcome can feel like preparation. To check repeatedly can feel like responsibility. Occasionally, these actions are useful. But once the available action has been taken, attention itself does not necessarily make the process move faster. Sometimes attention can be released, not permanently. Just for now, the message can remain somewhere in its digital path. The decision can remain with whoever must make it. The difficult conversation can belong to another day. The work already completed can settle into whatever comes next. Nothing needs to be mentally held in place to prevent the future from disappearing. The future will arrive without being watched. This may be one of the simplest expressions of patience. trusting that attention can leave an unfinished thing and return later if needed. The brain is built to return. Important information is remembered. Cues restore intentions. Environments remind us of tasks. And plans can be written or arranged so that they do not need to remain active every second. The mind does not have to keep every unresolved matter illuminated through the entire night. One by one, those lights can dim. The nervous system may continue producing small signals for a while. Perhaps a thought appears suddenly. Check once more. Perhaps an imagined conversation begins. Perhaps the mind offers another possible explanation for something that has not yet happened. There is nothing unusual about this. A thought appearing does not mean it requires completion. It can be allowed to arrive and then become less distinct. Like a cloud entering moonlight and moving beyond it, like a ripple reaching the edge of a lake and becoming impossible to follow, like a sound in the distance that fades before the mind decides exactly what it was. The ability to let these signals pass is not indifference. It is flexibility. The mind remains capable of responding when there's something to respond to, while no longer manufacturing urgency in the absence of new information. And this flexibility is never perfect. There will be other days when waiting feels much harder. Fatigue may make a small delay irritating. Uncertainty may become loud again. An important answer may seem impossible to set aside. Patience does not erase these moments from human experience. It gives them somewhere to go. Restlessness can rise, remain for a while, and fall. Attention can wander, become caught, and return. The body can tighten and then soften. Again and again, there is no final test to pass. No permanent state in which the mind becomes incapable of impatience. Only the growing familiarity of returning. Perhaps this is why natural rhythms can feel so reassuring. They contain return everywhere. The tide advances and retreats. Clouds gather and separate. Winter moves toward spring and, many months later, toward winter again. Leaves emerge, darken, fade, and become part of the ground from which other growth will come. Nothing in these cycles is motionless, and yet very little of it is hurried. Even the changes that appear sudden often have long beginnings. Before a flower opens, pressure has been shifting within its tissues. Before snow disappears, sunlight and warmer air have been adding energy day after day. Before a fruit becomes sweet, countless chemical reactions have been occurring quietly inside it. Before a forest looks different, millions of small changes have already passed unnoticed. And before patience feels easier, perhaps the nervous system has already practiced returning many more times than anyone could count. One less check. One slower breath. One moment of noticing an urge without following it. One evening, when an unresolved question was allowed to remain unresolved. These are small events. They do not announce themselves as transformation. But neither does a tree ring while it is forming. The ring becomes visible later, far beneath the branches. Roots keep extending into the dark. They do not know where every pocket of water will be found. Growth follows what is available. One direction becomes difficult, so another branch of the root continues elsewhere. The system adapts without needing a complete map of the soil. There is something peaceful in that image. Not knowing everything ahead does not prevent the next quiet movement. The same may be true tonight. There is no need to know how every pending situation will end. There is no need to decide how you will feel about information that has not arrived. There is no need to solve tomorrow with the incomplete evidence of today. The next useful step can wait until it becomes the next useful step. For now, There is only this portion of the night. A room becoming quieter, breathing continuing without effort. Perhaps the weight of blankets becoming more noticeable than the thoughts that were occupying attention a few minutes ago. Outside, darkness rests between the trees. A river travels through it, carrying water toward places that cannot be seen from where it is now. The river does not need to know the shape of every bend before reaching it. It meets each bend when it comes. Around stones, past roots, through narrow places and wider ones, always continuing. Far above, stars move so slowly across the sky that the movement resembles stillness. Beyond them, planets follow their long paths. Beyond those planets, the galaxy itself is in motion, carrying stars through distances and timescales that make a single night almost impossibly small. And yet this single night matters because it is the one being lived. There is no need to escape it in order to reach what comes next. The unfinished things can remain unfinished. Some changes are already underway. Some answers do not exist yet. Some outcomes are developing beyond the reach of attention. And some processes require nothing from you at all. The roots can continue. The river can continue. The stars can continue. The body can rest while the world remains incomplete. If another restless thought appears, it can be allowed to pass without argument. There is no failure in its appearance. Patience was never the absence of that thought. It was the quiet ability to return after it, to this breath, then the next, to the darkness beyond the window, to the simple fact that this moment does not need to become tomorrow before it is allowed to be enough. Somewhere beneath the soil, a root advances through a space no wider than itself. Somewhere, a drop of water moves slowly toward a river. Somewhere, a tree is adding a fraction of a layer beneath its bark. Somewhere, the tide is turning so gradually that no one standing at the shore could name the exact instant. And overhead, the night continues its silent motion. Nothing is late. Nothing needs to be rushed. The world is full of processes that know how to continue without hurry. For now, you can let them, and you can let the night continue too.